Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of XenTegra on Air podcast series. I'm your host, Indrajeet Ghorpade, Director Solution Engineering for XenTegra India. And I have with me my friend John Moody, Director of Pre-Sales for UK&I at IGEL. Hey, hi, John. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. So what's going on? What's new with you? I'm able to see a lot of things buzzing around about you, like couple of things happening, like you're hosting a couple of events, a lot of things coming
Yeah.
in couple of next episodes. So what's new? Like what's going on with
Oh,
you?
wow. I mean, it's crazy busy at the moment, which is awesome, right? And the more I'm getting into helping customers and people like yourself over, in that part of the world, if you like, it's getting very interesting at the moment. What I'm noticing is my mornings are getting earlier and my nights are getting later,
Okay.
which is great. Well, no, it's not great. It's terrible. I'm due to get married in 2 weeks, and I think I need some sleep, right? So, but that's good. It's all good. So, wow, yeah, what is going on at the moment? Um, I think what we're starting to see at the moment now is the new message that IGEL is coming out with around, security and end user experience. Wherever I talk to in the world at the moment, whether that's in the UK, which is the vast majority of conversations I'm having, or whether it's over in Australia or over in India, that message around security and end user experience is really starting to, gain momentum now. And I think at the minute we're looking forward to Disrupt, which is going to be our end customer conference over in Miami. We've got that coming up in May. We'll probably talk about that on another session, but that's
Sure.
getting very exciting. I'm trying to get tickets so I can go. I'm not sure at the moment. Maybe I'll just do the EMEA one. We'll see how it goes. So that's all tremendously exciting. But yeah, for me, I've got some user groups coming up shortly. So next Tuesday, I'm presenting at the UK EUC Forum, which I'm immensely looking forward to. And it's that topic again, right? And I think that's what we want to talk about today is user experience, right? Um, that's it. It's the same thing. It's just how do we provide great user experience?
Yeah, and like I think we talked about when we talked about like what are the USPs of IGEL, we specifically talked about security, user experience, and the better user experience which everyone talks about, right?
Yeah,
So maybe I think like let's talk a little more about it. So basically, user experience, it's not simply right what user is experiencing, right? So there are maybe a couple of areas or a couple of things where like the things uh, or the tasks which he's doing or right overall in his entire start for or working atmosphere for any country any company, right? So what all things he want and what all things he want to have a little with ease of access or like little with that flexibility and like a lot of other factors, right? So I think on that, just want to understand, right? What do you think, right, is user experience and like for say for example, any user is getting onboarded. So
mm,
what are the stages, right, or what are the steps where it maybe user
okay.
should
Yeah.
get that experience and which actually helps him to work or perform well on his job.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? That's my favorite subject, right? I've worked in EUC I worked it out the other day, 30 years. Um, which is way too long, right? I need to go do something else at some point. But yeah, 30 years. And I think when you join a new company, right, you're when you meet somebody for the first time, you tend to
Yeah.
make a judgment within about 7 seconds, right? So you meet
Yes.
somebody, I mean, you met me after 7 seconds, you thought, this guy's an idiot, right? And it's, we
Not
make
like that.
oh no, I'm joking, obviously. But everybody, it's a human nature thing, right? We tend to make a
Yeah,
judgment about somebody before we've even spoken to them, right? We make that in about 7 seconds. And I think onboarding into a new company is probably slightly different, but that experience of your first day, or even maybe before your first day, um, it's so important because it sets the tone for how you're going to work for that new company. So I have friends in the UK who work in the public sector in the UK, and when they joined, there was no laptop for them. They had no log on. They spent the first few days with no equipment. They weren't able to talk to anybody. They had no systems access. They couldn't do their job. And I think by the end, if that's how it's gone for you, by the end of that first week, you're going to be like, why am I here? Right? They
yeah,
haven't provisioned me any equipment. I don't feel valued. Yeah, you're not going to then do your best work, right? And this is the key thing for me. And our job within the EUC communities, how do we help people do their best work, right? And I watch my partner who works in healthcare in the UK, and she struggles with different applications all the time, complicated VPN, BitLocker, having to do that every single morning. And we work in the same office. So, we're at home office, and she has a desk over in the corner and I work over here. My experience in the mornings, I open my IGEL laptop, I turn it on, and I'm there. I'm in, right? I'm straight into a Windows AVD desktop. I'm working on Teams, I'm working on Zoom, I'm away I go. My partner will be about 10 minutes behind me. So that
yeah,
experience of actually doing work, that experience of being at work is, I think, our challenge. And that's the thing that we need to work to fix. And that to me is through not only data. So what data are we capturing as the IT team? And I'm talking things like, data we can get out of apps like Control Up, or Citrix Analytics and those kind of products, so we can actually measure things like network latency and how end users are performing. But also that, what applications are we giving to our users? When do we deploy updates? So quite often Windows updates get pushed down during the working day.
yeah,
Windows has to be updated, and that interrupts your work. And all those things lead to a negative user experience. So it's how do we as IT make our users feel part of that organization? Um, so I suppose one other way of looking at it is like I say, my onboarding experience at IGEL. The week before I joined, I had my equipment shipped to me. I got a nice pack of swag, including my IGEL hoodie. I got my water bottle. I got my new shiny laptop. It was great. I was up, I was working, and then day one, I'm like, yeah, do you know what? This is really cool. This is fantastic, right? And I think that experience of just starting out in the right way, starting out on the right foot is um, absolutely phenomenal. I was on a call. Do you know Doug Brown? Have you ever come across
yes,
Doug?
yeah.
So Doug.
He
He's an industry legend, Doug Brown. Which if
correct.
he
Yes,
ever if
yeah,
he ever listens to this, he will
yeah,
absolutely crucify me for it. But I've followed Doug all the way through my career, right?
yeah.
And I was on a call with him the other day, and he tells this amazing story, and it's so true, right? He said, no end user has ever phoned IT and said, thank you so much for replacing that Cisco router. My user experience is now brilliant, right? Users don't do that,
Yeah,
do they? Right? Yeah, yeah. Nobody ever phones IT at the end of the day and says, do you know what? My Microsoft Word was perfect today, or my Outlook was amazing, and all my Teams calls were absolutely on point and clear. Nobody ever does that. I mean, I don't do that. I bet you don't do that. Nobody does that, right?
yeah.
The only time we ever get a call in IT is when things are broken, right?
Broken. Yes.
And that's okay. I think that's how it should be. We shouldn't, um, but if I think so many users then don't complain at all. So if they do have a bad day on Teams, or their email doesn't work properly, or their SharePoint's not accessible, or they've had to update their Windows during the day, most of the time I don't think they phone the service desk, right? They just put up with it. So we have
Yep.
this silent group of users out there who are just saying nothing and just having a bad
Yep.
time, right? So
Yep.
how do we solve that problem? And that, to me, that's through data. That's through sensible IT policies. That's through, customers having their own user groups. How is IT behaving today? And I think all of those things, all those, pieces of the jigsaw need to come together. And I think the challenge for a CIO today is how is my user experience affecting productivity, right? Because that's what it comes down to. It's making users productive and making them do the best work. And I think it is metrics, through people like, obviously we partner with ControlUp and Citrix Analytics and all those kind of things that we've mentioned. It's a combination of that. It's then a combination of actually talking to users. And we need to gain those insights, right? And I think that's where we're moving to in EUC. And that's where it should be, right?
Yep. Definitely, yes. And even you said like you actually given that very good example, right? Which you mentioned like where like users when things are working well, no one will reach out to you. Like when things are broken,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
then only like users will end users will come back to IT or like they'll raise a ticket or like they'll approach IT team, right? So I think in that sense, right, there is like there'll be, and I think we even discussed this a bit, but right, user experience, what we are talking about, like when we are talking about like great user experience, instead of that, we should focus on like what poor experience users are getting and like how we should avoid that to happen.
Yeah. So this is we obviously spoke about this in the pre-meet, but I'm speaking about a topic of EUC forum on Tuesday, which I think will be available online. I'll make sure you get a
Okay.
link to it. And there's a guy called Charlie Munger, and
Okay.
Charlie Munger used to be the business partner of Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway, so a big US financier, one of the richest people
Yeah.
in the world. And
Yeah.
one of the things that Charlie Munger talks about is everybody always strives for success. So, where am I going to be in 3 years' time? What is my career going to be like? I want to be successful. I want to be thinner. I want to be working out in the gym. I'm going to get to bench pressing 220 kilos. I mean, that'll never happen. But I'm going to be amazing, right? That's my goal, right?
Yeah.
And Charlie Munger, he says that's the wrong way of looking at life. That's the wrong way of looking at the world. And what we should do is focus instead on how do we avoid failure.
Okay.
So let's take collaboration, right? What would be the easiest way to make an end user fail at collaboration with their team, right? So we could say, right, okay, you could have a bad Teams experience, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Zoom doesn't work properly. Maybe the network keeps going in and out, and my headset breaks. SharePoint doesn't work properly. That would make it very difficult for me and you to collaborate, right?
Yeah.
So what Charlie is saying is, so once you have that list of things that make a bad experience, you then set to avoid those problems. So make sure you have a reliable network, make sure you have a reliable headset. Maybe you do something to optimize Teams so it's consistently working. And if you avoid those mistakes, then you will be successful. So the question I think we should ask is, how do I provide a poor user experience? So we'll make the
Yep.
operating system very complex to manage. We'll make sure there's lots of updates and interferences to the end user. Um, every new version of the operating system will move the start menu, so it's difficult to get used to. Um, We'll make sure we put lots of agents on there, like VPN, antivirus, all those kind of things. We'll have lots of pop-ups, lots of notifications. That would
Yeah.
make it really poor. The other thing we could do is, hey, we could even put adverts on the start menu, right? We'll have those
Yeah.
distractions. We'll make
Yeah.
applications run slow. That will be a really poor user experience, right? So we now have a list of things that make poor user experience. Now our job
Yeah.
is we just avoid those things. And this is
Yeah.
what I think then plays to IGEL, right? Because we don't have any of those things. We're a lightweight OS. We don't allow users to install applications. We are read only. We don't have the notifications. We don't have the adverts in the start menu. So therefore, we can provide a great user experience. And I think that is a really interesting way of looking at UX. Is let's look at how we could make it really bad, and let's just avoid doing that. And then that way, we know we're providing a great user experience. And I'd encourage every customer to look at here is the system. Here's my line of business application. If you're a bank, here's your banking core application, right? How do I make that as bad as possible? How do I make
Yeah.
that app run really, really terribly awful so everybody hates it? And then just avoid those problems, right? You think about it, it's such a simple way, because everybody goes, how do I provide a great user experience? Well, it's easy. You just don't provide a bad one, but I need to know what the problems are. So if we avoid those things, then we know we're going to be doing it. This is the podcast, Indrajeet, where we should have Simon from Control Up on. I'd love to get his thoughts. Maybe we should make that happen in the future. But yeah, so it's
Yes.
not going for the goal. Let's try and avoid the failure. So yeah,
Yes. And
that's
definitely, right. Let's do even like webinar maybe like in our coming
yeah,
well, coming
that'd be
weeks or
fun.
coming months, including Simon as well, right? But like the way you explained it, right? So this is right. So not this particular example or like the way of looking towards things, right? So right now I'll say right, it is not only about user experience, the overall strategy or overall methodology which you explained, right? It is even a
Yeah, yeah.
kind of a life learning methodology that even if in our life, right, a lot of things like if we think in this manner, so like not only about UC user experience, even we are giving some insight to like see towards the life or like some guidance to see towards the life as well to our listeners because it's the overall like the way of like looking at the things which you mentioned, right? Obviously, like for end user experience, it is like, and for the IT, if they follow this, right, how things will make user experience poor, and like if those things are noted down, and like if those things are actioned well, then I think like automatically the user experience will better to the user. And in a similar way, like in life as well, right? If we avoid those things, right, which are troubling us for a long, or like which are troubling us and like which are bothering us always, uh, if we avoid those things, if we list down those things, and if we avoid those, obviously, right, it will actually make our life experience as well
Yeah,
better.
yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, in terms of your own life, right? The whole theory works exactly the same, right? So, I don't know, in my life, I think I'm due to get married in a couple of weeks. My kids are great. I'd say my life right now is about, I don't know, 8 out of 10, right? Um, but I mean, I don't use social media anymore other than LinkedIn. But like, if you go on Instagram, right, you go on Instagram and you're on your phone and everybody's
Yeah,
posting these beautiful pictures and you think, wow, their life is 10 out of 10, right?
yeah,
How
yeah,
do why am I not as great as that? And of course,
yes,
that's a whole different kind of mental model around that. But it's like it's rubbish. It's absolute garbage. And so we start to compare, and then that becomes our goal. I want to be, I want to be like that guy on my Instagram, right? And actually, it's the wrong way of looking at it. And really, what we should be doing is, well, if I avoid, you know, how do you make what's the easiest way to make a happy person unhappy, right? You start asking that question. You're a happy person. How do you make a happy person really unhappy? Well, okay, let's mess about with their food, right? Let's mess about with their nutrition. Let's stop them going to the gym and working out. Let's make a horrible home life for them. Let's make them unemployed and have no job and that kind of thing. That person at that point would then be unhappy,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
if my system is, well, I avoid those things, then by default I will be happy.
Yeah.
Right. And it's
Yep.
the same thing. You can apply that mental model through any aspect of life. Obviously I work for a vendor, and my theory is, well, if everybody used IGEL, the world would be a great place, and I genuinely believe that. But it can apply to anything, right? I just obviously talk about it in the context of user experience and IGEL and what we're doing, right? But that theory will apply to anybody or anything, any project, any whether that's at home or at work or what have you. Just how if I avoid the problems, then I will have been successful, as opposed to
Yeah.
focusing on the end thing. You focus on avoidance, which is
Yeah.
where it's very clever.
Yeah.
This got
And
this
yeah,
got this got really deep today, Indrajeet, didn't we? We got very deep today. That's good.
very deep. Yes. Yes. And right with this, right, I think now, like, maybe you can just, like, before we conclude, right, because we talked about, like, end user experience in general as such, right, as well as, like, even we related it with the life experience, and, like, so at I think as a concluding statement, right, if you can just highlight those things which IGEL is doing, like, again, I think it's a recap during the conversations we already covered, right? What
Mhm.
are where we mentioned, right? What are the things which are making things poor for the end user? So I think a lot of things we already captured. But what IGEL does to avoid those poor experience, and with that, the
Yeah,
end user experience is great with IGEL.
yeah. I think we discussed this on a previous podcast as well. But one of the challenges I think customers are seeing today is if I increase security, if I make my applications more secure, then that downgrades that makes user experience poor. So if I increase security, I lower user experience. And really, I think this is where our job plays its part, in particular around user experience, right? Is you don't have to make that decision. You can be more secure and provide a better user experience at the same time. That is absolutely the focus for IGEL. So regardless of what kind of application you're trying to access, whether that's provided through a VDI solution like Citrix VMware or AVD, or you're adopting SaaS applications and maybe you're on that journey, you need to
Yeah,
connect your headsets and your peripherals. That's where IGEL is, right? What we've always done is we've virtualized Windows, we put it in the data center. We now call it DAS or VDI. We used to call it published desktops and published apps, but we centralized that management of Windows by virtualizing it. And then the thing that we got wrong is then we kept deploying Windows to the endpoint. And
yeah,
really now, what customers need to consider is that endpoint strategy. And the great thing that we're doing at IGEL with IGEL Secure OS is that can be a lightweight OS that's there, that drives user experience, but also increases security. And,
yeah.
yes, it's a change, but it's one that allows and reduces that complexity that customers are facing today.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think in short, like, with a read-only operating system, and, like, only those required apps on this user system, like, so that, like, that particular end user should focus on, like, his uh, apps, or, like, his, or,
Yeah,
like, whatever applications he has to work for his job role. He will only focus on that instead of having any additional softwares which, or additional things to look on, or, like, those regular updates, those restarts and, like, shutdowns in between the work, right? So it is kind of a like, kind of a approach of IGEL, where it's a read-only operating system, and, like, very few, like, very few applications which are actually required for that specific user to perform his specific job role. Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's
that's it.
that's actually, yeah,
That's it. It's perfect. Yeah, that's exactly it, right? And there are benefits to that, right? If I can retain focus at work, I'm not getting the distractions. I'm not getting the distracted by pop-ups and rubbish, garbage. Then, from a mental health perspective, that's amazing, right? That one of the worst things that you can do from a mental health perspective is be constantly context switching. If you work, nobody can work on two tasks at the same time, right?
Yeah,
And the again, let's go back to that mental model of inversion. How what would make you feel worse at work? Well, constantly having to switch between two or three different things and getting nothing done. Um,
yeah,
is it really? So how do I avoid that? Well, if I can avoid the notifications and the pop-ups and the distraction, then that
yeah,
allows me focus. And if I focus, then I can complete my task. That makes me feel better. That improves my mental health, right? I am not saying for a second that IGEL cures mental health problems. Let's just be very clear. But if we can reduce the amount of distraction that we have at work, then surely that has a healthier outcome. That surely makes work more enjoyable, right? And that's again
yeah.
goes back to user experience, right?
Yeah. I think, yeah, as you rightly mentioned, that this episode was like very deep, and like we even
Yeah,
like
yeah.
along with the technology, like we talked about life learning and like overall mental health and a lot of things. I think this will be a very interesting episode for
So
our listeners.
let me just answer that because I think that's interesting, right? I have this. It's interesting how we say, well, it's not a technical thing, and it's like, no, you're right, it isn't, right? But this is what is very special about EUC, right, and end user computing is we cannot only be focused on the technology because at the end of the day, everything we do touches real people, right? And that's people like
Yeah,
me, that's people like you, that's people like our partners. And all they are trying to do is go to work and do a job. So yes,
yeah,
we do have to think a little bit deeper at times, and we do have to think about that human aspect of technology. And I know it's not registry edits and patches and new apps and what have you. No, sometimes it is that psychology, it is that behavior. And I think that is as important as the tech, right? And I think we'd be remiss, we wouldn't be doing our jobs properly if we were not thinking about those problems as well. That is our anybody who works in UC, that is what we do.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, I think yeah, we like see again. You even added like end user community or like EUC group, right? What like overall EUC is, right, and like how EUC can be of help, right, for
Yeah,
like not only for our like professional life or like even it will be for our personal mental. Like a lot of things we learn through like you see groups and like this kind of a community, right? So I think so that is like again good thing to talk about maybe in our upcoming episodes, right? Like we can even talk about right a little more about UC and like how those communities are, right? Even specific to technology, like where even knowledge sharing along with the knowledge, those bonds are happening within the community, and like there is a lot of learning. Even that one more topic maybe we can highlight in our upcoming episodes, I think.
yeah, definitely, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be good. I'd love to do that.
Okay, I think with this, let's conclude this episode. Thanks for your time, and looking forward to meet you in our next episode. And like, let's talk something more, right? I think more deeper than this, and like make our listeners like being interested for this kind of like podcast series.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, John. Thanks for your time, and looking forward to meet you in our next podcast.
Will do. Thanks ever so much. You take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.